Now we're joined from Paris by Mr. Maher Nicholas Firzli, Director General of the EU-ASEAN Center, to discuss who truly holds the upper hand. Mr. Firzli, good evening to you, sir. And let me start by asking, analysts say China is winning the trade war through its dominance response to US pressure.
I'm delighted to join you today. I think, the title of the Foreign Policy magazine article you're referring to, which was, I think, published yesterday, and it's titled, Why China is Winning the Trade War. I think it's exaggerated, right? To be objective and fair and neutral. And I think, in communication studies and in political science, we have to look at the locutor. So what is the locutor? It's who's talking. Who's talking? So if the guy talking, is he from the left? Is he from the right? Etc. And the locutor here is clear. It is Foreign Policy magazine.
You mean here that it's an opinionated article?
It's very biased. It's very biased, but many people are biased when it comes to China and Trump. So what I'm coming at is, Foreign Policy magazine is extremely biased. They are not neutral, but they are not alone in that position. The majority of so-called experts in Washington, D.C., New York, Paris, Berlin are on the same wavelength as Foreign Policy magazine. To make a long story short, they hate both China and Trump. So because they dislike China and they hate Trump, when they discuss that issue, they cannot be neutral. Why are they not? And I'm going to finish on that note, because let's not waste time with analyzing too much who foreign policy is. But why are they not neutral? Because they represent the old order. And the old order, you could call it the neoliberal, right? The neoliberal free trade NATO order. And that neoliberal free trade NATO order, the symbols of that order are people like George Bush, George Bush, Dick Cheney, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Emmanuel Macron. They are the old order, which is now being destroyed by China and Trump's America. And so they believe in free trade. They believe in open borders. They believe in blah, 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 free capitalism. And all that is collapsing, right?
What do you think? What do you think? What is kind of negotiations is Trump moving with? If we're speaking about a new kind of negotiations or policy, what are we speaking about here? Because or what you're speaking about, or this current, led by Bush, as you said, and Dick Cheney, and Obama, and Hillary Clinton, and yes, please.
Exactly. So why the title is wrong, those who say that China is winning the trade war and Trump is losing, I think they're idiots. I think they're wrong. I think it's too early to judge because, to know truly who's winning and who's losing, we have to wait another 2 or 3 years at least. But one thing is sure, we don't know who's winning yet in that gigantic, new great game, the age of geoeconomics, right? That huge rivalry, industrial, economic, financial rivalry, pitting, the Chinese dragon against the American eagle. It's enormous, it's gigantic, it's across the board, across all sectors of the world, economy, and the universe. That will take 3-4 years. But we already know who's losing. So who is losing? Europe. So clearly, the European Union, Germany, France, Holland, the EU is losing a lot. England or Britain is also losing a little bit. And many Asian and American countries are losing a lot. For example, Mexico and Canada, they are losing. In Asia, the only winners in Asia probably are Singapore, South Korea, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Abu Dhabi. Why? Because they are playing the Trump card. So Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, South Korea, Singapore, they're quote unquote following that Trump model to different extents in different ways. They are embracing the new world. The new world is the age of geoeconomics. Europe, Canada, Britain.
Can you further illustrate on the geoeconomics and what does this say and what does this mean? Because people would not really understand this terminology because it's new, as you said. Can you please illustrate on that?
So what's happening now is a great illustration. So Trump attacked many, or he thought, and I think he was in part, he was partly right. In early April of this year, he declared a new trade war or a new trade arrangement. He said that, the old trade arrangement was hostile to America's interest. He wants to reindustrialize America. He wants to bring back factories away from Europe and Malaysia and Vietnam. He wants to transfer the factories to Pennsylvania, Oklahoma, Kentucky, and he's weaponizing. So weaponizing means that you are using finance and trade as a weapons, as an arm. And so he's weaponizing trade and finance. And he started in April of this year, 9 months ago, and by hitting hard many countries with tariffs. And most countries lost because they panicked and they made big concessions to Trump. And among the countries who panicked and made huge concessions, you have Canada, loser, UK, loser, France, Germany, Europe, losers. China is the only one who said, no, I'm not going to make any concession here. And they replied to Trump's trade tariff pressure by playing the rare earth minerals card. They told him very aggressively and bluntly, we controlled 60-70% of the world's output of rare earth minerals, but you know what? We controlled 95% of the world's output of refined, ready-to-use minerals. Now, do you want them for your factories in Pennsylvania, Oklahoma, Ohio? If so, stop your tariffs. If you don't, we will stop supplying American industries with rare earth minerals. That is geoeconomics. It's using balance of power, the brutal balance of power, to stabilize the world order.
Right. Now, if we speak now about smaller economies, and if we speak from the Gulf to the Southeast Asia, they are forming new trade blocs. Are we witnessing the birth of third pole in global commerce beyond the US and China? What do you see here?
Personally, I think no. So personally, what they call in the Arab world and Africa and parts of Asia and South America, a new non-aligned movement, عدم الانحياز الجديد. I don't think it will work. But one thing will work. You have between China and America big pivot nations, and you only have 8 or 9 strategic, important, big pivot nations, and they are in a good position because America cannot afford to antagonize them too much. Because if Trump pressures them too much, they can go to China, and so if Trump is not nice to them, they will play the China card. And what are these big pivot nations? Russia is one of them. South Korea is one of them. Israel is one of them. Egypt is also a pivot nation. Saudi Arabia is also a pivot nation. Brazil is a pivot nation. So what are pivot nations? They're quite large, and they are located in a very strategic geography. Egypt is a perfect example. It's a bridge between Africa, the Mediterranean, and the Middle East. It's large, it has a big population, etc. So it is a pivot nation. So in that new great game, pitting China against America, only pivot nations can, to a certain extent, tell Trump, no, please, Donald, don't pressure us, or else we'll move into China's camp. And that's exactly why Trump wants to end the Ukraine war, because
then
Trump is stuck.
If I may ask you here, you have mentioned some of the pivot countries. You mentioned Russia, you mentioned Egypt, you mentioned some of the countries. Now, some names of who you mentioned here are part of a bigger bloc that is called the BRICS.
Yes.
So we're speaking about China, Russia, Egypt, and many other countries who are in this bloc.
Yes.
What do you think? What do you think of that? Where would that bloc lead? Would that lead to a multipolar system, a multipolar geo-economics abilities? What do you think?
Yes. Yes, but it will take a lot of time. So public opinion in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, in North Africa, in Asia, they would like to believe that the BRICS are already something very advanced and mature. Likewise, in Venezuela, Brazil, Mexico, they would like to believe that the BRICS are an alternative, a third way, الطريق الثالث. But it will take time, a lot of time, right? And in reality, the power of the BRICS, the economic and financial power, is China. Let's be honest. Brazil, India,
Right.
Russia, they're nice, but the core power is China.
Right. So that remains to be seen. The world needs multipolar system and new geo-economic systems, not one system. We thank you so much, Mr. Maher Nicholas Firzli, for your insights